I will start now. Welcome,
Yeah,
everybody, to the Pantheon. I'm your host, Ray.
I'm Evie.
And today we're talking about Batwoman. But first of all, happy Cinco de Mayo. It is May the 5th. It's. Do you even know what Cinco de Mayo actually is? Because honestly, I have no idea what that actually represents.
Isn't it the um, celebration of the dead?
Wasn't it Halloween?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And if we're wrong, they can write in and tell us.
Because I know September 16th is like the revolution. It's like basically their
Yeah.
independence. But I don't. It's a big celebration. So happy Cinco de Mayo. People party. I always think of South Park and Cartman. So that's my
Yeah.
go-to. So so I have a really warped version of what Cinco de Mayo is based on South Park. So I am not the source for the information on this case. But happy Cinco de Mayo. I'd be drinking right now, but I need to be cognitive for the podcast. So we'll go from there. So
Okay.
Batwoman, 1968. I will set this up a little bit and kind of give you some background information about the time of it all. And Evie can go into the show, basically his thoughts on the show. And
Yeah.
this was an unauthorized version of the 1960s Adam West serial.
Yeah.
The popularity of Batman. I mean, there was a 1948 serial that was well known. It came out in theaters for kids to watch, and they made Adam West made it kind of in the zeitgeist of the 60s. It was psychedelic. It was hip. It was kind of fun, and it was bombastic and crazy. So they made Batwoman here almost the same way. I mean, yes, her costume was a little more revealing, but because she was a luchador in wrestling, her attire represented it was covered up and looked like the Adam West costume. So you have that, and the cowl and the cape, it also was very much like Adam West. And her character, they tell you in the beginning she's a socialite, so she was rich, and she uses her fortune, her skill set. She trained vigorously, and she became towards fighting the forces of evil, like Adam West, like the character of Batman, a rich socialite orphan dedicated to fighting crime. And she had gadgets. In her case, she had a compact that she can modify into a gun, and she was basically a sharpshooter. She could go deep sea water diving, which kind of makes sense for this particular movie. And also in the essence of where we are in terms of where this show was taking place in the 60s. Mexican wrestlers were a really big thing, especially the luchadors, right? So the big ones at the time was El Santo and Blue Demon. These were larger than life characters, and back then too, and I guess even now to a certain extent, wrestlers would go out in public keeping their masks on because they were like a celebrity status. And El Santo and Blue Demon was so much so that they actually got into film. Their characters was translated onto film. So we had El Santo fighting vampires and all of the Universal monsters, like the Wolfman and Dracula and Frankenstein. So they were like not much like Abbott and Costello, but in terms of like having a story outside of, because they were like larger than life fictional characters. So it made sense to translate into that genre. And when we talk about Batwoman, the villain has an assistant named Igor, which was, one of the villains. So if you're wondering like why his name's Igor, it's like Dr. Frankenstein, is because they took place. The idea, the concept of the dark universal universe is what they kind of gravitated to. So that's where we are. And the only downside to that is the people who were like Salvador and who wrote and produced the movie wanted, at some point, their dream would be to have some sort of like crossover or meshing with the Batman series. Unfortunately, when this movie was debuted, Batman was already into season 3, and they introduced Batgirl, so there'd be a conflict. Well, you have 2 women, but also that was the final season for Batman before it went off the air. So there was no chance for it to be a crossover, even though it was an unauthorized take on it. And just before this, in 1966, when the Batman series debuted, there was another movie from James Warren called Jesse Warren called The Wild Women of The Wild World of Batwoman. which was kind of like a really hipster type of movie, black and white film.
Mm.
But this was more true to the Adam West stuff, and it made more sense for the crossover.
Yeah, definitely. Cool.
Okay,
Thanks for that history, man.
Yeah, so now that we're up to speed, kind of thing, what were your thoughts of it? And can you just explain what the plot of this story is, if you can explain it if possible?
Okay, the plot of this story is that the scientist tried to make not clones, but to make a band of super people, and how the that were evil, and he had to he wanted to kill them all before they did any more damage. So he required the police to help him. So yeah, to actually help him. All of that was about to just he needed those super people to survive, or else mankind and womankind would be killed.
Okay, sure.
Before no, what were you gonna say?
No, I have no idea what you're saying.
Oh,
you're right, but it's the opposite actually. You're right. He's a villain. No, he's a villain, and yeah, he just wants to make fish people.
Yeah, Fishman or something.
Man. Yeah,
that's it.
Okay. I wanted to jump in, but I'm thinking, no, I want to like a fish. I want to wheel you in a little bit, just wheel you in a little bit. But okay. So, okay, how does Batwoman fit into all this? This is the question. So the doctor's name is Eric Williams. Okay, so we open up I start from the beginning. So the movie opens up in Mexico, or Acapulco. Is Acapulco in Mexico?
I think so. Mexico.
Acapulco.
Yeah.
Is that somewhere in? You're right. Yeah, it's got to be Mexico.
Yeah.
Or somewhere, or not division. My geography is bad. Okay. So so some kids, they find a body washed ashore, and it's the fifth Mexican wrestler. And the police are baffled. They can't figure out what's going on. So, and it was on the newscast, and the police have no clues. They don't know what's going on. So the FBI gets involved, and they send in a special agent. I believe his name is Mario Rubez,
something
like that. And Rubez has a special agent called Batwoman, who is international superhero, if you will. Which this is the part that makes very little sense, because the world knows of Batwoman, yet and only Rubez and another agent knows her secret identity. She works with the police, kind of like Adam West, who is a deputized officer of Gotham City. That's how they portray him as. So she works with the government, and she's a highly trained, combatant superhero, right? So they bring her in, and what's funny is she gets into Mexico by plane. She literally parachutes in off a single airplane onto the beach of Acapulco. So no customs. She just lands in Mexico illegally, which I question that logic. And she goes in, and so the doctor Eric Williamson, basically he's stealing the pineal gland of these wrestlers, because they have some sort of wrestlers are these strong athletes. They're like Superman. So he wants to breed super prehistoric fishmen. So he's combining, he's adding the pineal gland into fish, right, and mutating them into human hybrid, retro, basically prehistoric fishmen who could walk. And not talk, but walk and follow his commands. And eventually he wants to breed them. Once they become adult, he wants to breed fishermen to rule the world, to rule the subterranean world. There is no logic behind his thinking. He's completely lost his mind, right? And Igor, his assistant, helps him to do that. And they use a little toy man to mesh with the goldfish, which and they put the pineal gland liquid into it. I don't know. It's if you think about it too hard, you're gonna hurt your brain. It doesn't make any sense, Okay, so they come in, and so because it's a wrestler, they figure, okay, so they go to a wrestling building where these wrestlers practice and everything. They figure, okay, let's stake it out. So they have a guy in the underground tapping the phones, which by the way is illegal. And you also, why they're tapping payphones, they're assuming that whoever's in there is going to make a phone call out, which
Yeah.
doesn't make, when you think about it, doesn't make any sense, right? So, and what's worse is that it's a blind man who's not really blind, who makes the phone call, says, yeah, I got the next wrestler to do this. It's, a lot of it makes no sense. A lot of it's crazy stuff. So they tap the phones and realize that they trace the phone from the payphone, and they find out it says Dr. Williams. And they mentioned earlier on that there's some cases that are similar to the missing wrestlers that took place in Hong Kong and Macau. And apparently Dr. Williams was in Macau and in Hong Kong around the same time as this. He lives on a boat. He's been living on a boat for 6 years or 6 months. He's retired, he's a retired scientist, and they have no proof yet that he's the guy behind it. And this boat is huge. Like, his laboratory is the boat inside. But there's no windows. When you look at his laboratory, there are no windows, yet when you look at the boat, there are windows all across this boat. So again, logistics is gone out the window. And it's very, very wide for a laboratory. But nonetheless, so he makes this fishman. So Batwoman goes in to try to, they find out he's about to leave the country because it's getting too hot. People are kind of figuring out what something's going on. So they try to get to this guy. It's a cat and mouse chase, but one of the funniest things is that because Batwoman's getting too close, they want to eliminate her. So in her appearances, during her time looking for this, she's also wrestling. That's a luchador, right? Because because everyone knows who she is, but yet she's a well-known and accomplished Mexican wrestler or a masked wrestler. And because luchador is a big thing, being a masked hero and being a wrestler, it just sort of kind of fits into their societies. Again, doesn't make any much sense, but let's go with it. And so they go so the blind man, who's not really blind, puts a tracking device on her cowl, and then she finds it. What's funny is that she figures out she's being tracked, and she wants the people to come to her, to where she's staying, to try and catch them. But she takes out her mask and goes to bed, which I don't understand how that whole process of trying to have a secret identity, and knowing that she's being tracked, she goes to bed out of costume. And they sent in a fish man, which surprised her. But even if they didn't send in the fish man and send in the goons, they would know who she is. It defeats the purpose of, I don't know. Like, anyway, I'm overthinking it, or I'm looking at it too seriously, but a lot of it makes very little sense. But it's fun. It's a fun show. She has a karate chops, so it's kind of fun. Like, how like Batgirl has those kicks, she does these chops, and of course she does these Mexican flips. Overall, it's a fun, like, hour and 20 minutes. It's really short. It's smart. She's very beautiful. I mean, they really go overboard to show how sensual she is and how attractive she is, But what were your thoughts? Like, I'm going on for a long time, but like, what are your thoughts of the movie in general?
Thoughts of the movie, stories, weird, but it's just a good time, good, something just to watch that doesn't make any sense, but it's different, something I definitely watch again, for something to do. But
I think you're right. Like, if it was because it's the 60s, and if you think about the time when it came out, it makes more sense to be like Adam West. If you watch an Adam West show now, you wouldn't watch it. It'd be just no. It wouldn't make you would like this. But like, as kids, you and I, it was like I wanted to be like Adam West. I thought he was the greatest thing going. Lo and behold, I was an idiot as a child. I had no idea what I was thinking about. In retrospect, and like looking at it now, if I could tell myself stop it, I would as a child, and I'd go on to something more exciting and more better. But so in the context and in the era which it was in, Batwoman was an amazing show. It was ahead of its curve. It was a little bit more serious than the 60s Batman, which gave it a bit of a more edge. The concepts were a little off still. I mean, we poked holes in the concepts of it all and like the logistics of it, but she was a really serious crime fighter. She had sex appeal. Yeah, there were things where like she would be in the water, but when she comes out of the water onto the boat, she's like bone dry. So there were some things in it. I mean, you can't look too hard. Uh,
Doesn't make sense.
yeah, but in terms of the story and then just following through with it, it really does
Yeah.
deliver, and it's compelling. She has a charisma about her, as
Hmm.
well as being attractive, and she's easy on the eyes. But they made her a compelling character, kind of like Linda Carter in Wonder Woman. Of course, she's
Hmm.
very beautiful, and as a kid back in the '70s, I mean, I'm not looking at the sex appeal; I'm just looking at Wonder Woman, right? So, I mean, boys and girls looked up to these characters at that time.
Hmm.
Same thing with Adam West and Burt Ward
Yeah.
in Batman and Robin. So, in the context of when it came out, it was a very popular movie, and I think it did really really well. But because of the shortcomings of the series itself, uh, they didn't bother going further with the Batman movie. There was no sequel, and
No.
the actors went on to do other things,
Hmm.
in Mexico.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a good synopsis of it all. I
Mhm.
think you're I think you are right. How many people do you think still watch something like that?
Well, the beauty of this is that you can watch this for free on YouTube. You can watch it with
Yeah.
subtitles and everything, so you don't have to
Hmm.
pay a cent, and it's totally free. And it's a
Right. Yeah.
it's a strong recommend to watch it because it's really fun. I mean, we are reviewing soon, like Captain Marvel, like the
Hmm.
1948 serial.
Right.
We're going to be reviewing Batman 1948 serial, like Zorro, Fighting Legion, like a lot of these like we did Captain America 1944 not too long ago, right? Like
Yeah.
so like watching these era type shows, the stories are really compelling. I mean, yeah, in terms of the 2022 2023 eyes, it's a little strange and goofy, but if you think about it, when it came out, this is back when kids were watching Hopalong Cassidy and
Hmm.
westerns. I mean, that was
Hmm.
the popular shows, and the Bonanza and all these shows. um it's amazing. These were like the MCUs of its time, before there
Yeah.
was the MCU. So it's colorful, and it's still, I think it's really, really well received. And if you watch it now, it's actually quite entertaining. It really captures your imagination. It's a much scaled down, obviously. And I know we're in an era where everything is immediate and instantaneous and CGI and good makeup and good story and sensationalized and a budget, but for
Hmm.
what they have, it's really, I think it's solid, and it really does. It's family friendly. The key is, I think it's very very family friendly, and it's not
Hmm.
offensive, and it's something that and it's free. You can watch it whenever you like. So
True.
that's my plug for it. But I really did enjoy it. Like, it was fun. When I watched it twice, I found the faults in it, but it's kind of fun even in that sense too. You're like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. Like, how come, like, how
Hmm.
come this or how come that? So, but it's actually part of the lure of it to see it for its flaws, and it's part of
Hmm.
its. I'm not gonna say I won't say you can have a drinking game playing watching Batwoman, but you can if you thought about it hard enough. You can do all kinds of stuff with this show. And but yeah, I thought it was really good. It's I'm sure it has a cult following, which we don't know about. But
Right.
what about you? How do you look at all of this?
All of this, I think that back then it was kind of, I don't know, a new thing.
Mhm.
People have um, you know, have these shows, and um, they're good, funny, not serious things.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's just something like that I watch, and for the time it was good. 40, 50 years later, 1968, it was kind of funny now, but something that I would definitely watch if I yeah, I would definitely watch it just to see what it was like, because people would be um would like something like, you know uh for the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for those listening to us on Spotify, we can put on a poll or ask a question like, uh, what were your thoughts of? We actually, you listener, we want you to watch. If you watch watch the movie, let us know your thoughts, because I'd be really interested to see your comments on this movie. Even after we've reviewed it, I'd actually respond to you if you actually write down something, just to see have your take on it, because it's a show, it's a movie that, you know what, if under the right circumstances, could have been a series. You know, it would have done well. I think it would have done really, really well, because again, the masked heroes, it was very, very popular, and it still is to this day. I mean, wrestling has maybe not has kind of simmered down because of UFC, but it's still a thing, you know. And the superhero genre, MCU, the resurgence, it's like a renaissance. It's here, and I think it perpetuates itself. It's there. Anyways, with that, I'm Ray.
I'm Evie.
We'll talk to you later. Take care.